Hi, this is Deepak. I'm one of the first student at the founding cohort at HiveSchool, and thanks to HiveSchool that now I'm working as an associate manager for the US market at VWO, a product by Wingify. Well, enough about that. I feel we are here for a much better cause, which is unveiling our annual placement report for 2024 and 2025. And for that, I introduce Nikhil here. Hi, Nikhil.
Hi Deepak, what's up? How are you? How's job?
I'm all good. How are
How's
you?
work? All well, all well. Thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah.
And I think, rightly said, very big day for us.
Yeah.
Because we're unveiling the annual placement report finally across the last 3 cohorts that we've graduated from HiveSchool here between 2024 to 2025. So I think a big day overall.
I'm personally very excited for this because I was from C1 and I've seen that many other cohorts have been placed so far.
Correct.
So I'm very much interested to know the figures which have definitely gone from A to B to C to D.
Correct.
I'm sure it's a progressive jump.
Correct.
Let's over to you.
Perfect. So let's get this started. I think let's start off with something which is extremely exciting here, which is what every single person would be waiting for who's watching this video.
Yeah.
Which is the numbers. Okay. And I'll start this off with the first cohort, and then I'll move to second cohort, third cohort. So across the last 1 year, which is between 2024 June to today 2025, which is once again July, we've graduated 3 cohorts, which is online. Across the last 3 cohorts, we have almost 33 students who've gotten placed. We've got 38 total offers across these 33 students. The average CTC annually has been 14.76 LPA. The median CTC has been 14 LPA. The highest CTC has been 30 LPA. The average for the top 25% has been 19.5 LPA. The average for the top 50% has been 17.3 LPA.
Nice.
And the average for the bottom 25% has been 11 LPA. The lowest CTC till now has been 9 LPA. And the average recruiters per cohort who've ran their process in every single cohort has been 55. The total number of recruiters that have ran a process with HiveSchool officially in the last 1 year has actually crossed more than 100.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so that's been the entire annual number here across the last 3 cohorts that we've gotten. Now, something which is even more interesting here as a number is that across the last 3 cohorts, we've got 36 students who've officially sat for placements, out of which 33 students are placed and 3 students are currently sitting in placements with us.
Nice.
So that's been the overall annual cohort average till now. Now I'll actually get to even more interesting data point, which is exactly what's been the trend across first cohort, what's been the trend in second cohort, and what's been the trend in first cohort and third cohort. So I'll just start with something which is, I think, very close to your heart, which is cohort 1.
The first.
So in the first cohort, we had almost 90 students, out of which 17 students got into this concept, which is Hive Elite Club. So we have this concept, I think you know it already, which is for anyone to be eligible for placements, because it's an online cohort that we used to run at least for now. A person to be eligible, they have to have at least 85% attendance and they have to have 100% capstone submissions. Anyone who has this gets into the Hive Elite Club. So in the first cohort, we had 19 students in total. 17 of them actually qualified for the Hive Elite Club. Within these 17 students, the number of students who actually sat for placements was 11. There were 4 students who were building their own startups. Out of these 11 students, all of them were placed. We had total 11 number of offers. We had 2 people who opted out of placements. For the first cohort, out of all these people who sat for placements, we had an average CTC of 15.2 LPA. The median CTC was 14 LPA. The lowest CTC was 9 LPA. The highest was 25 LPA, and I think you're the testimony of it. The top 25% was 20.2 LPA. The top 50% was 18.5 LPA. And the interesting number, which is the average salary jump, was 1.5x. Now in cohort 2, the average CTC actually went up to 15.3 LPA. The highest went up to 30 LPA. The median CTC went up to 15 LPA. The lowest was 9 LPA. The top 25% was 20.2 LPA. The top 50% was 17.5 LPA. And the bottom 25% average stood at 11 LPA.
Nice.
New recruiters added in the second cohort was 15. Apart from that, the average salary jump actually moved from 1.5x in cohort 1 to 1.75x in cohort 2. Now in cohort 3, the numbers were even more interesting, which is the average CTC actually came down to 14.5 LPA. The median CTC came down to 13 LPA. The lowest CTC went up to 10 LPA. The highest CTC was 25 LPA. The top 25% average, very similar to exactly what we achieved in second cohort and first cohort here, which was 19.25 LPA. the top 50% average was at 17.25 LPM. The average salary jump actually moved up to 2x from being 1.25x in cohort 1 to actually achieving 2x in terms of average salary jump in cohort 3. Now, here was a very interesting number here, which was the number of freshers in cohort 3. It actually went up to 50%. So in cohort 3, we had 50% people who were freshers, and we had 75% people who were earning less than 7 LPA. And that was also the reason for why there was this trend of the average CTC basically going lower as compared to cohort 1 and cohort 2, because we had lesser number of freshers there. Apart from that, the new recruiters added in cohort 3 were 30 in total.
Nice.
And total number of recruiters who actually ran their process with us was 65 in cohort 3. So that's been the overall stats and overall numbers here from cohort 1 to cohort 2 to cohort 3. And currently in cohort 3, out of 14 people who opted for placements and who sat for placements, 11 of them already have offers. Total number of offers that we've got is 13. 3 people are currently sitting in placements.
Oh, nice.
Everyone who sat for placements in cohort 2 and cohort 1 have officially been placed. So that's been the overall stats till now in terms of cohort 1, cohort 2, cohort 3, in terms of their compensation packages. And yeah, so that's been the overall update in reference to placements here.
Nikhil, I would like to start by saying that these are amazing numbers. So it's kudos to you and your team for pulling this up. Amazing jump in terms of your metrics. It's an exponential train. I can see that.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to my mind, and I'm sure a lot of questions would resonate with this, a lot of people would resonate with the question is, how are you able to do this? It's basic, right? Your lowest package in one of the cohorts was 9 LPA, which is kind of median or highest package for most of the B schools out there in India.
Yeah.
After this spend and are indebted about 25-30 lakhs in their debt or in loan for that matter when people go for MBAs, right?
Yep.
So how is your team able to pull up this in a short span of time? What is the kind of skill set that you're imparting and what the kind of students that you're looking at?
Perfect. I think, Deepak, thank you so much for the question. Very interesting question here. And I think I have my own set of answers. I have my own set of methods here to exactly how we are able to do it. So we have a very different GTM for placements. So we don't really run placements like any other B school. It's very different. Hardly, like, there might be 20% of the recruiters that we've generated through outbound, which is reaching out to recruiters and telling them that, hey, we started off the placement process. Can you come and hire from us? That is not really something that we do here. We do a 100% event-led GTM here, which means that in our entire pedagogy, be it the online program and be it the offline program for that matter, we have a lot of challenges, which is imparted in the entire curriculum. For example, in these last 3 cohorts, which was say cohort 1, cohort 2, cohort 3 in online, we had this flagship event, which was the convocation ceremony also for all these cohorts, which was Salespreneur. So therein, every single student from these online cohorts, the entire batch used to fly to Delhi. They used to stay here with us for 3 days. Now, for those 3 days, in the initial 48 hours, they were building their capstone projects, which is we were giving them a company. They were working on that company and they were building an entire strategy and a sales pitch for that company. On the 3rd day, there was a panel of 30 to 40 sales leaders, founders, and HRs who used to come, and all these students used to get into teams. They used to get prepared and they used to pitch live in front of that panel of 30, 40, 50 leaders. Now, from there, these leaders had 3 options. Either they could choose to hire, either they could choose to pass, or they could choose to interview. This became one of our core GTMs to run placements. So, second cohort, we had almost 60% offers that came through the Salespreneur day.
Nice.
In 3rd cohort, we had almost 70% offers that actually came from the Salespreneur day. Apart from that, we also ran a lot of mixers on the campus. Now, the idea here was very simple, that we wanted all these recruiters in the ecosystem to come and experience exactly what the students at HiveSchool look like, for which we started doing on-campus mixers. So the idea was very simple, that we brought in 50, 60, 70 leaders from the ecosystem. We asked them to come on the campus and do some sort of a networking mixer.
Right.
And then we had our students also to come into the same mixer. And then these students used to get a direct access to all these sales leaders. So just pick up any company for that matter. So let's say if in case you have Wingify,
Right.
where once again, let's say you are working in. If let's say you have Bitespeed. So we used to make sure that either the sales leader or the founder from these organizations are coming in form of a sales mixer. And then we have our students who are also on the same platform And then they're getting this entire chance to interact with them, to talk to them, tell them about exactly what they've done as a part of the HiveSchool journey. And then once again, that is something which used to be a hiring funnel for us. So this used to be one of the funnels here. For the offline PGP, what we've also thought of is slightly more interesting. So now, what used to happen once in 4 months here for you in the online cohorts, this is going to be something which will be happening in every second week for the offline PGP. So the entire curriculum is laid down in a fashion that every 2 weeks is when a challenge is thrown at them.
Right.
So let's say if in case you're learning about maybe GTM, so they will be given a challenge to build an actual GTM plan for an early stage startup.
Right.
And the real founders or the real leaders from that company or from that startup and even maybe anyone in the ecosystem will be coming in and these students will be pitching live right in front of them.
Right.
And that's not really going to happen once in the program. That will happen every second week in the program for the entire 9 months. So that will once again become another funnel for us in reference to placements. This is something which actually became a GTM for us in reference to crack the placements.
Right.
Apart from that, I think what we also did here was that we fixed our minds in a fashion that we'll only handpick folks. Which is if you look at the number of students in every single cohort, it's not even more than 25.
Yes.
And that was always the intent, that we'll never really scale in terms of volume. We'll first see exactly how many students can we handpick, how many students can we work with personally. So we used to handpick 19-20 people in every single cohort. We used to work with them personally. We used to make sure that every single student has a journey that we are able to track.
Right.
And now after, let's say we have graduated 35, and now let's say after we've placed 30 plus people across the last 1 year, now is the time when we are actually expanding the cohort size to 40 in the first offline PGP.
Nice.
So that was always the plan, that you only increase the volume in terms of number of students every single cohort, depending upon how many student outcomes are you able to comfortably get out. So yeah, that was our entire plan in terms of placement GTM.
Sounds like a great plan. I remember when I got into the first batch and you specifically told that we're not looking to have a mass of students, but we're looking to have handpicked students who will be basically able to deliver, and we have an extensive interview process.
Yeah.
I genuinely love the idea of working on a mini capstone while you're in the interview and then going through and reviewing that. You just talked about a few things and I picked up 2 things out of that, and we'll talk about it right from here. The first thing is about recruiters and the second thing is about your offline PGP program. So we'll shed a light on that, but at first I would want to know, earlier when at C1, and this is purely on a comparison basis, it might have been difficult for you to pull up recruiters to make sure that they put faith in people like us since we were from the first batch.
100%.
How has that notion gone from C1 to C2 to C3? Was it easier to get more recruiters further? What was the point of recruiters coming from C1 again coming in, reappearing in C2 and C3 to get more talent from that? What was the notion? What was the talk like? How is that mentality all over?
So perfect. I think Deepak, once again, a very good question here. So typically what we've been able to figure out as an institute here is that we have our own strength in exactly what kind of roles are these students prepared for. So if I also talk about the nature of recruiters, there are majorly 3 types here for us. First is startups, which is seed funded to series funded. So 60% to 70% of offers actually are coming from these startups. So major recruiters who are recruiting or hiring from HiveSchool are actually startups who've raised a seed round to a series round.
Right.
Second is enterprise companies. Maybe companies like Gartner, companies like LinkedIn, companies like MongoDB. These are all enterprise companies.
Right.
This is something which is once again we are able to crack, but not something which we are actively looking at. Then third is mid-market companies, which is companies within the range of around 200 to 500, 600 or let's say 700 employee size are the third nature of companies that are hiring from HiveSchool. This is what we were able to figure out in the first cohort itself. That will always be a place for all the tech companies, SaaS companies, AI companies, consumer tech companies, maybe now with offline cohort coming up, D2C companies, maybe FMCG companies, majorly startup companies who are looking to hire good talent, who don't really have that connotation, who don't really have that traditional or conventional connotation to exactly what they are looking at, but they want someone who's extremely real time in terms of work. That is something which we were very clear on right from first cohort. Now, what we did here as a part of the entire curriculum was that we made the curriculum very centric to the proof of work. For example, in your cohort also, like for example, how you also got hired.
Right.
You had a capstone project that you had to build after every single sprint that you had attended. Now that capstone is something that we share across with recruiters. Now, for example, for every single cohort or for every single student in the cohort, they have to build a portfolio. In that portfolio, they have multiple capstones that are already listed. Now, this entire portfolio or this entire proof of work is something that we share across with the recruiters. So they don't really get a traditional CV. Rather, what they get here is a proof of work of students. Exactly what's the kind of work that they have done. Do you just want to interview?
Right.
So our job right now here is to not ensure a placement for you also. Our job is to only get your foot in the door.
Right.
If we are able to get a foot in the door, then I think placement is something that you will be able to ensure for yourself if in case you've done justice to the curriculum and to the program. That was our mindset and our ideology here to be able to run placements.
Right.
With offline PGP also coming up, I think the pedagogy will remain the same. It's going to be even more immersive. For example, as I told, if there was one challenge across 4 months in your program in online, it's going to be one challenge every 2 weeks in the offline PGP.
Right.
And that is something which will continue for almost 9 months.
Right.
So now the amplitude of the proof of work that the students will be able to build right after they graduate, it's going to be much higher and much at scale with what we've been able to achieve till now, at least in the online comps. So that was the overall idea here.
That's great. I mean, I can see the amount of effort people are putting in and the seriousness of the people who are judging that salespreneur event. And I could see the whole vibe and the ambience is pretty great and pretty motivating enough to, go forward. Before we jump on the topic of your offline school, I would want to talk about the quality, the set of students that you capture in C1, C2, C3 and going further. As you said that you're going to be increasing the strength to 40.
Yep.
Has any recruiter so far given you a specific requirement of I want a student or I would want a talent from, let's say, coming from a B2C to B2B altogether?
Yep.
Or let's say, is there a specific transition that these recruiters are looking for? Or is there a trend that you would want to talk that you've seen commonly in these cohorts?
Yeah. Okay, so once again, interesting here, Deepak. So I'll just tell you the three kind of people or three kind of students whom we are able to cater till now.
Okay.
So first and the major one right now is what we have been able to realize after cohort 3 is freshers.
Yeah.
So anyone who's currently in the 3rd year of college, or let's say someone who's recently graduated, maybe working at 4, 5, 6 LPA in terms of their overall compensation, and now wants to come and let's say don't really want to give CAT, don't really want to get into that race of getting a 99 percentile, don't really want to do a MBA with 20-25 lakh rupee student loan. That's where we become very relevant. Purely because for them, this becomes a platform where they're able to scale their current salaries to almost 2x or 2.5x. So let's say anyone who's making 6 lakh right now can easily scale up their salaries to 12 lakh or almost 15 lakh annually after this program. Apart from that, I think we've also been able to become a mecca for all the freshers.
Right.
Let's say anyone who's just graduating or anyone who's trying to get their first job, and they're able to get their first job at a 12, 13, 14, 15 LPA CTC. And that too maybe as in a tech company, SaaS company, B2B company, AI company, consumer tech company, D2C company, as a founder's office, maybe as a founding media.
Right.
Someone will directly be working with either the sales leader or the revenue leader or the founder to scale or build their entire vertical. Now, even if they start at a 13, 14, 15 LPA job initially, after 3 or 4 years, they'll anyway land up into a 25, 30 LPA job. So this becomes a very good replacement for them. If let's say they are looking to do an MBA, it becomes a very strong alternative MBA for them. But okay, they don't really need to take a student loan of 20, 25, 30 lakh. And even if they want to start off with their first job, they don't really have to slog on those jobs of 4, 5, 6 LPA compensation. They can just directly come in. If once again they learn it enough, after the program, they can get deployed between the salary range of 12 to 15 LPA. That's where we've been able to figure out our overall niche in terms of first persona of students, which is freshers. For our online programs, I think a very interesting category that we've been able to tap here is people who want to transition from B2C to B2B sales.
Okay.
And I think you are an example of
most common, I think.
Most common example of this. Apart from that, people like Vinay from cohort 2, people like Vivek from cohort 3, people like Hardik from cohort 3 once again. These are all the folks who used to work in B2C sales. And now they have transitioned into B2B sales. So that was second persona. Apart from that, people like Deepthi, for that matter, in cohort 3, used to work in marketing, used to work as a growth marketer, joined HiveSchool to work into B2B SaaS sales. After the program, she was able to transition into B2B SaaS sales. That was third persona. Right. And if I talk about freshers also, people like Aditya from cohort 2, people like Raghav from cohort 3, people like Vedant from cohort 1, Rohit Laganpal from cohort 1, Gauri from cohort 2. These have all been testimonies. Came in as freshers. They didn't really have their first job. They were actually trying to crack their first jobs. Got into companies like Zenskar, Zuddl. For Vedant, he actually got into sales and then he transitioned to getting into VC.
Yeah.
Rohit right now is working with Sales.
Yes.
Apart from that, Gauri got into Bitespeed. So all of these people became a testimony to how can freshers leverage from the program. And by the way, all of them are actually working in the range of 12 to 15 LPA.
Right.
So for the first job also, for that matter, it was very strong for them because the first job that they got into, they were actually making 12 to 15 LPA as maybe 20, 21-year-old. So I think that's the kind of persona that we were able to see here as a part of the cohorts that were coming into HiveSchool. And a similar persona is, I think, what we want to replicate for the offline program as well. So a lot of people ask me, like, do you want to exactly what kind of crowd do you want to cater when you talk about your offline PGP?
Right.
I think we are extremely clear with that all the students who are very early in their careers, maybe early graduates, final year students who are recently graduated, 1 to 2, 2.5 years experience, either want to, let's say, work or maybe, let's say, even want to build for that matter. Those are the kind of students that we try to cater to. People with 0 to 2, 2.5 years experience, maybe earning in the range of 4 to 6, 7, 8, 9 LPA, and now want to maybe get a 2x, 2.5x or 3x jump post their MBA. Are the kind of people that we become a very relevant fit to. So yeah, that's there.
Right. So Nikhil, one thing that I noticed while our placement process was going on, and that was the kind of companies and different kind of recruiters, they came from different backgrounds and they all came and appeared for. And in fact, in our cohort, we had students going in different roles altogether, different markets altogether. So maybe let's talk about a little bit on that.
Perfect.
What kind of roles that you're actually getting on board and the markets that these people are working in. And if in case a fresher comes up, does he has that kind of a skill set that he can work for a US market or a different market altogether? Are you grooming them on that? So maybe something.
Perfect. I think Deepak, I'd love to answer this across 3 layers. The first layer is, number 1, exactly what kind of roles have we been able to bring on the campus till now? So in the online cohorts, since there was a very specialized program into B2B SaaS sales, 100% companies were only B2B SaaS tech AI companies that were coming on the campus. With the offline cohort, since we've opened up avenues to even more industries like consumer tech, like D2C, like FMCG, like retail. So a lot more recruiters from these industries will now also be coming in for the offline PGP. If I talk about the kind of roles, so typically a founding business development representative to a BDR, to a account executive role is what we've been able to bring in on the campus till now. Apart from that, even key account management for that matter.
Nice.
Now, who's a BDR or an A? Someone who's actually involved in the revenue chain for a company.
Right.
To be able to do the entire outreach, to be able to book meetings, to be able to close the entire deal. These are the kind of roles that once again come on the campus typically.
Right.
Now, more interestingly here is the kind of markets that the students actually get placed in. So most of them don't really get placed in Indian markets. They're actually selling in the US market. Nice. So if I give you the distribution also, 70% of the students, after they've got their placements, they are currently working and selling in the US market. That's the primary market that the students get hired in. The secondary market for us is India. So 25% of students currently are once again working for the Indian market. And that too is because once again, they don't really want to work in night shifts. They don't really want to work for the US market. They're more comfortable with selling in India. And that's once again their connotation overall. 5% of students actually work in these markets like Middle East, UAE, Dubai, Qatar, Europe, UK, all those kind of markets. So these have been the kind of markets that the students have basically worked in currently or they're currently working in. Now, if I talk about the nature of recruiters also, there are 2 categories here as well. What we've been able to figure out here is that we've become an extremely strong mecca for all the tech, B2B, SaaS, AI companies, and not even companies, but majorly startups who maybe raised their seed round to a series round.
Right.
So all these companies like Zenskar, Wingify, VWO, axiTrust, Gan.ai, Bitespeed, or maybe Zuddl, Spry, and a lot more. Like these have been the companies that have actively hired from HiveSchool. And I think this is where we've been able to figure out our moat as well. That okay, all the students who are getting trained from us, since they understand the business more deeply, since they understand the industry more deeply, since they understand sales more deeply, they actually want to work in a role wherein they are able to see the scale in a company, or when they're actually able to work on multiple dimensions in a company. And that's once again the kind of companies that we become a mecca for right now. Then the secondary kind of companies are enterprise companies here. All these companies like Amazon, Gartner, MongoDB, LinkedIn, Lena AI that have run the process with us. This is the 20% chunk that actually hires from HiveSchool.
Right.
So 80% are these startups and 20% are these enterprise companies. And that's exactly, I think, and that's the kind of balance that we also want to maintain. We want to be an institution that is able to cater to startups that are currently evolving, that are currently coming up, and we want to provide strong talent to them. And then once again, we also want to open up a lot more doors to all the enterprise companies. So that's been a general understanding of the kind of roles and the kind of recruiters, the kind of markets that the students currently work in. So yeah.
So I want to take a spin on this question, wherein I was asking you about the category of recruiters. Let's talk about the category of students in your batch. Now there must be students who are, I'm sure most of the students are opting for placements, and most of the students are coming there to make sure that they learn something and get placed further. But I also had students in my batch which were focusing on their own startups, and then there were students who did not opt for placements as well, right? So two things. First is, what is the distribution that you've been seeing as a trend in these cohorts, and how many students are opting for it and not opting for it? And by chance, let's say if somebody is not able to get placed in a certain cohort, what's the path for them further?
Yeah, no, makes sense. I think a very interesting question here, Deepak, once again. So typically, okay, so here's a very interesting fact also. Since we've run online cohorts, there's a huge chunk of audience who only wants to come in and do upskilling. So they're not really here for placements.
Right.
And that's the reason for why, if you see cohort 1, out of 17 students who actually qualified for Hive Elite Club, 4 of them were building their own startups. So they never really opted for placements. And 2 of them took a voluntary placement opt-out, which is that, okay, we are only here for upskilling. We're already working in our jobs. We don't really want to make a transition, but we once again want to make a future network prospect for us.
Right.
In second cohort, out of the 21 students who actually qualified for Hive Elite Club, out of 22, there were 15 students who opted for placements. There were 4 students who actually opted out of placements. And there was 1 student who was building his own startup. Now, out of these 15 students also, there were 4 people who were freshers and who were not really eligible to work in a full-time job. So they did an internship initially. So these 4 students got placed in an internship in cohort 2. And then in cohort 3, they came back to the placement cycle again after they had wrapped their internships. And now recently, all those 4 students have actually gotten placed into full-time roles. That's how the entire placement cycle also works. So it's not like after a cohort graduates is when we shut the placements. The placements run 365 days.
Oh, nice.
At Hive. So unless a student is getting placed, or unless a student has been able to achieve the outcome that they once again wanted, we try to work with them. So it's not like anyone, let's say, not really being able to achieve a placement in the initial 1 month, 1.5 months, we'll not really be working with them. We'll make sure that every single student who comes in, they're able to get to the outcome. Even for that matter, if there is some sort of a mishappening that happens in the company or in the job, and maybe they are laid off for that matter, they can still come back to the placement pool and we'll still help them to get into the next role. And the reason for this is also because of the fact that we don't really run cohorts in very high volume. We don't really get more than 20-25 people each cohort.
Right.
And that has to be an ethos. And I think that's an ethos that we also want to build upon. The reason for why we also don't really want to scale in terms of volume, unless we are very sure that we can get every single student to the outcome that they are expecting, we'll not really be scaling in terms of volume. So all of it is doable currently for us because we are slightly lesser in terms of volume. So yeah, that's the basic idea.
That's great. I mean, one thing that has always stuck with me is the concept of preaching what you practice, and that is the networking in this case. Your networking has been quite strong, and your networking has actually shown me, and in fact many other students, that it has a great potential in terms of when you build yourself a known product or build yourself a known brand. That comes to one question that I oftenly face, and this is just for the camera. I would want to say that I get a lot of inquiries from students since I was the first student, and the very common question that I have is, how did you decide to put trust in HiveSchool? And I think for me to answer that question, I have different answers. I have different varieties of it. But I would like to ask you as a founder, and let's say there is some law student who would want to take admission in HiveSchool, but yes, has the question that why should I put trust in you?
No, I think Deepak, I would love to answer this, but first I would love to hear your stance here. Since you have an answer already, so I would love to first hear out from you itself. So,
I was very simple, and I was very one-sided about the fact that I am here to upskill and learn. B2B as a term, B2B as an industry has actually always fascinated me. I've had a very fair share of my experience in the B2C industry earlier, and I've kind of gotten in and around of the corners of what that whole role can demand out of me. I've juiced it out completely, and I was looking for something better to upstep on.
Yep.
And B2B came into picture, then HiveSchool came into picture, and I came here from for the perspective of learning.
Yep.
I could have gone, or any other student who's just coming from the learning perspective could have gone to any other school as well. A, B, C, D, they are
Yep.
now opening up as you have paved the way. But I feel it's more on the fact that how you're able to put yourself in the market. I could see the kind of pedagogies that you guys are following, and you've been very transparent with me right from day one, your entire team. That made me put my trust on this whole startup, because I have in my entire life worked around startups only. And I think even from learning perspective, I would want to go for something as a hustle culture than just a reserved and balanced one. So that was my part, but over to you.
No, I think a very interesting question firstly, Deepak here. So typically, it's a very valid concern firstly for anyone to trust a new age B school that's being set up, and trust on the outcomes as well, because they might sound too good to be true, and that's okay. So we do empathize with the fact that okay, parents and their students and the students will have their own share of doubts.
Right.
Because it's literally the first year that the B school has actually been set up in.
Right.
But I think a very easier way, and I think a very efficient way for us to how we've been able to solve it is only by being transparent. The reason for why we also do a 3-layer of admission process, wherein every single student at least has to talk to us for 3 hours before we release an offer. So the first round happens with Prabal, my co-founder, 60 minutes. The next round happens with me, 90 minutes. The third round happens with the both of us, 30 minutes. And only then we release an offer.
Right.
So within those 3 hours is when we are able to define expectations.
Right.
That, okay, exactly what are you expecting from the program? Can we deliver it? Yes or no? And we do it very transparently and very honestly. If we can deliver to the expectations, we'll say that, okay, this is something that we can do for sure. And I think we would love to offer you. And if there is an expectation that we can not really deliver to, we'll say, no, HiveSchool might not really be the right place for you. I think you can go and explore further. So that has been the simple ideology here for us to be able to win trust, because we for a fact know that it's going to take time. And no one is at fault for this, because it's because you B school, or let's say you do an MBA once in your lifetime.
Right.
So for you to take that opportunity and for you to be able to take that blunt of risk on something, it's once again going to take levels of overthinking.
Right.
Which is fine. But us as a brand, how do we solve it? Is purely by giving these students a complete access to C1, C2, C3 directory. So there was this LinkedIn post. I'll tell you the story. There was a LinkedIn post that mentioned HiveSchool. And that mentioned that, okay, how do we trust the placement reports from HiveSchool after we had got the placement report out for second cohort? That's exactly when my co-founder, he did a comment, and he in the comment, he mentioned every single profile in cohort 2. So we had 21 students in cohort 2. He mentioned every single LinkedIn profile of those 21 students from cohort 2. And he was like, hey, feel free to go and talk to any one of them. And I think once again, we might have extremely good reviews. We might have a few negative reviews also. That's going to happen for any single B school for that matter. But what you have to rather focus on is to be extremely honest and transparent with the audience. Hey, this is who I am. This is what we are building. If you like it, we would love to once again have you in the ecosystem. If you don't like it, that's okay. You might have something better waiting for you. So I think that's how, like, winning trust is very simple. I think winning trust is something which happens with process. You cannot really enforce it, but you can just be transparent. So I think trust comes with honesty and transparency. That's all you have to show as a brand overall here. So yeah, that's the ethos.
So one thing I would want to ask, your HiveSchool is perfect. You have your upcoming cohort launching, and you have your offline cohort launching, and you're building the notion around getting placed in sales altogether. And this is kind of a moment of revolution that you've started, wherein people have understood that, hey, we have something called sales, and it's not a taboo, or it's basically a respected job.
Yep.
What is your notion around, even for those people who just think it's just sales, why there's a lot of talk about it? You know, what's exactly is, what is the kind of mentality that you see in and around in the market about sales, and how would you like to elevate it further with your effort in HiveSchool?
Yeah, no, I think Deepak, firstly, sales has never really been given the respect it deserves, is what I feel. a lot of people till now have that very negative connotation about sales.
Right.
As if in case we ask them exactly what is sales for you, like, hey, we want to sell insurances, we have to do 150 cold calls every single day. That is not what sales is.
Right.
Like, if you actually go and ask any high school student for that matter, they're today as 21, 25, 26-year-olds, they're selling to founders.
Right.
They're selling in the US market. They're trying to do, they're selling in the Europe market. They're selling in the UK market. They're selling to CXOs, CEOs, CMOs, CFOs. All the people in that top C-level persona are the kind of people they're reaching out to, are the kind of people they're talking to, are the kind of people they're booking meetings with. They're not selling solutions worth, they're selling solutions worth $50,000. They're selling solutions or tech softwares worth crores. So I think that is what actual sales is. So
Right.
sales has never really been given the respect it deserves. So the idea with sales for us was very simple, that we wanted to make it extremely sexy. And the only way to make it sexy is by showing outcomes
Right.
of these students. Exactly what are the kind of role that they're working in. And if you just ask them exactly how much money are they making, fixed part is one thing, the total CTC is one thing. But on top of that, in terms of commissions, in terms of variable component, what they make is actually either equal to their fixed part or maybe sometimes even 1.5x on their fixed part. So I think if in case you have to make good money, or let's say if in case you have to genuinely grow at a very strong pace in your career, there cannot be a better role than sales. So like sales has to be the go. And there's also another interesting fact. If you pick up any CEO of any company for that matter, in 90% cases, you will see that at some point of time in his or her career, that CEO has worked in sales. And the simple logic to it is purely because once you're working in sales, you're able to foresee, observe, and look at revenue very closely.
Right.
You're able to manage cash flows. You're able to work with cash flows. You know exactly how to bring in revenue. You know exactly where to spend. So you're the most closest part to revenue. And for you to be able to go and lead any revenue vertical, any category for that matter, any growth vertical, for you to even lead a company for that matter, be a CEO, be a CXO, be a head of growth, be a head of category, be a head of business, be a CRO, a chief revenue officer, I think you need to work in sales. That's the only way to go. So like the people who are actually working in sales or starting their careers in sales today, and if they're really good at their jobs, 5 or 6 years down the line, they'll be making extremely strong money from any of their peers. So that's typically how we try to once again solve the connotation of sales. And for us, I think the metric is very simple, that how there has been an XLRI for HR, how there has been a MICA for marketing,
Right.
how there has been an SPGen for consulting and finance. If it has to be sales before 2030, it has to be HiveSchool. So we just want to be on that top tier B school league or category for sales. If someone has to talk about an MBA for sales, they have to talk about it from HiveSchool. So that's the only metric that we're trying to chase here.
So Nikhil, I loved the experience that you shared with me for all the cohorts that you've had and loved your vision further. But I'm pretty much excited about the PGP cohort, the offline PGP cohort, which is going to launch in September. So what's your thoughts and what's your message for the students there?
I think I'm super excited firstly, Deepak, here for the offline PGP to come up. That was always the vision. That was something that we were working on from day one. And I think September is when we see the vision get real here.
Yeah.
I think the only message for these folks is going to be that we've nailed it in B2B SaaS right now. Now we are looking to nail it in a lot more industry, be it consumer tech, be it D2C, be it AI, be it FMCG, be it retail, anything. We've nailed it with placements right now, but we also want to nail it with a lot more job creators coming out, which is not job creators who are just looking for a fundraise, but people who are actually able to do sales real time and generate revenue for their companies, for which once again we set up an entire Hive incubation cell as well. So I think the only message to the founding cohort is going to be that guys, I think we'll see you on the campus, and looking forward to having you all here as a part of the HiveSchool journey. And let's chase all these outcomes that we've been able to achieve in the last 1 year together once we come here on the campus in September. The next placement report that we get out, which is going to be next year, let's make sure that the results, that the outcomes are a lot more elevated, something that we're all being able to be proud of as a community. For all the ones who want to check out the placement report, I think you guys can just go check it out in the comments, download a detailed placement report, and I think me and Deepak will see you next time with the next placement report coming up. And thank you, Deepak, for joining in and had fun. So yeah, that's all.